like before when I was writing, especially like in early high school, we'd get papers back and there would often be like comments written in there. Um, but I feel like I couldn't really do anything with those comments, and I feel like they weren't really clear, or they weren't really specific on what I needed to do. They would just be kind of overall like, oh, this was a good job, or it wasn't a good job. A lot of the times we couldn't really like return in a paper or anything. It was just like better luck next time or something, and I felt like it wasn't really as helpful to me to grow as a writer.
In the past, it's normally on a written piece of paper, so you'll have teachers give you back your draft. It often has handwritten comments on it that sometimes are easy to read and sometimes they're not, and often they will also write things like good and circle things, and you're not always sure what those comments mean, and in the end sometimes you're so confused by the handwriting that you end up just correcting more of the grammatical errors than the errors that are actually wrong with your piece of writing. And so I think that in the past it's been difficult to necessarily grow as a writer due to these forms of correcting.
Well, it depends on the teacher, but usually it's kind of hard to read, and it's just scribbles, and then you can't really tell where the comment is supposed to be placed in.
At first, I wasn't really open-minded to it. I thought it was stupid, to be honest. I was like, I like the traditional way a lot better. But, and I thought it was really messy. It was hard to like figure out what, Google Docs was and everything. But once I figured that out and once I started to get feedback, it was just so much easier to see what I needed to do in my paper, specific comments for specific lines or paragraphs, and it was just easier to not like have to, go back on my Word document, look at a piece of paper, and then just like, copy and stuff like that. It's just so much easier because it's like all on there, and it's just really clear to see what I need to do as a writer.
I'm someone who definitely likes to computerize things more than I like to handwrite them, just because I feel like my brain is often moving so much faster than my hands can write something. So right from the start, I think I really liked Google Docs just for the fact that it was all very computerized. I can save it and I can access it from any computer without the email medium, and the fact that I can look at people's comments right on the digital format rather than, as I said previously, in the writing format. It just makes it so much easier for me to take a draft and edit that same draft instead of having to recreate a new one.
Honestly, I was not a fan at first, but I love Google Docs now. I just feel like it makes it so much easier, and once I got used to it, then I just started to love it. But I think that it's just when it's a new thing, you're used to a certain way of using things, and like you're used to getting the comments on paper and just being able to correct it yourself. But as soon as I got used to the way Google Docs worked, it became easier to have access to that same paper wherever you went on the computer. You didn't have to email it back and forth to yourself. And you didn't have to struggle reading the teacher's handwriting. And I ended up really liking it.
At first I thought the idea was kind of weird. I liked Microsoft Word a lot better, and so I was kind of rebellious against it. But then as the year went on, I liked to enjoy it more because, and since we had timed writes, that would be especially helpful since he could read while we were writing and then give suggestions in that way.
I feel like digital feedback, it's a lot easier to talk to and communicate with the instructor, especially like, between me and you, like it's just easy to comment back and forth on something. And it helps me as a writer to know what you're looking for and what I should be doing, and it's just a lot easier for you to teach me like different writing skills or me to improve on my own too. And oftentimes I comment myself on like things, maybe I should reword this or maybe I should do this or that, and so I can go back and see what I thought and then kind of, improve that way too. So
The handwritten, like I said before, was kind of hard to necessarily take your draft that you were writing new and then go back and forth between the drafts and read the writing. And now when I access my Google Docs, I can easily just look at the format, look at the comments directly highlighted on the spaces that need to be changed, and right there correct it and then delete the comment. It just makes it so much easier to actually pinpoint what it needs to be changed and how I need to change it, rather than just guessing and trying to interpret what the teacher wanted me to do and how I want to put that into my piece.
I think it just becomes easier and a more efficient way to do it. It becomes easier for the teacher, I think, as well, because they don't have a stack of papers. They can just go online and look, and it just becomes computer to computer, and I think it's an easier method.
Well, it's they're still different. They're still different, but I do like the digital one more because you're not limited to the space on the paper as opposed to if you were just writing, and then it's more clear and it feels more professional because it's typed and stuff. So you always have a constant interface of which to work in.
I just feel like it's easier to revise when it's on Google Docs, and it's just, I mean, I can just see everything that I've put on there, and I can see like, and I like the feature too that where you can like look back at what it was before, like the whole document, and see what changes you've made and how you can just see how your writing has improved on there, and I just, yeah, I feel like it's been really helpful to me.
Now that I'm really on the Google Docs, especially in this class, I feel like it's helping me a lot because sometimes I'm somebody who gets easily frustrated with trying to take comments and necessarily change my piece, which is hard sometimes because you have such a specific idea of what you meant, and sometimes it gets hard when people are reading it and don't always interpret it the same way. So now with these new forms of revision online, I can really take those comments and even comment back on my Google Docs, and that just makes it so much easier to communicate with my instructor and change it in a way that I feel like will include the comments. It just makes it a lot easier because handwritten, sometimes you're erasing things and you're changing them, and this digital way I can just look at what was highlighted, I can change it, and we can go back and forth and kind of create a better piece and make me a better student, as well as I feel like make the instructor more knowledgeable on who I am as a writer and my writing style.
It almost, this might sound weird, but it makes me want to revise my work because I don't have to find the paper and I don't have to struggle and read the handwriting. And it just makes me, like, I just have to go on my computer and look at the comments, and I can comment back and talk to the teacher like you can converse and ask them what they're talking about. And I think that it makes me almost inspired, if that's the right word, to go back and correct it and make it as good as it can be.
It's helped tremendously in the past when you want to have someone look at something, you would have to email them, and then for each update you had to send another email, which would get tedious and cumbersome, especially on the reader's behalf. And so in this new way with Google Docs, it saves automatically, so every change you make automatically changes in there, so you can just share it with them once and then they can see every change you make ever. And then with the comments, you can always resolve them, and so that kind of lets the reader know that you've already took their comment to mind and fixed it appropriately.
It's just a lot clearer and it's just easier because it's all there. I feel like it's more organized too, like all my thoughts are there. I don't have, 3 different copies of the same paper that I can go back and look at comments, and it's just, I feel like it's just more organized. So.
Well, there's tons of areas that are different and which are beneficial to us as writers. And then for one instance, you can have multiple people on the same document at the same time. Like yesterday I was revising our Mount Pleasant High School Student Senate Constitution, and so me and the parliamentarian could have a dialogue through Google Documents while we edited it simultaneously. And at the same time, since it's digital, you can access it wherever you are. For example, when I remember coming home from my away soccer game and having a paper due the next day. Instead of waiting to get home to type it, or just write it on the bus when it's all shaky, I could just download an application on my phone and write it straight from the bus. And so it just adds various elements and dimensions to your writing that and accessibility that you otherwise wouldn't have.
I definitely think that it makes me want to actually correct my piece, and not in the way that before I was against changing my work, but sometimes in the past I feel like it's been such a hassle to correct what has been given back to you that, like I said, sometimes you're just like, okay, I'll change my periods and my commas and I'll try to correct some other things, but now that this is an easier way of doing things, it makes me a lot more open to changing things as a writer and growing as a writer, because it's so much simpler to make the changes that now I feel like I'm more interested in growing as a writer through this digital format.
I just would recommend it to anybody. I think Google Docs is a great way, and like I said, as soon as I got used to it, then I thought it was much more efficient, much easier, and I think that any student would think that.